Good evening once more, and welcome to our new participants. My name is Dr. Sally Getugi, and I hope you can all hear me loud and clear. It's a privilege and an honor to be able to be the moderator for today's session. So thank you to the KSA for giving me this position. I am a resident in the University of Nairobi undertaking masters in anesthesiology. I'm seeing our participants are growing in numbers, so we welcome everyone. Today is going to be an interesting session. Dr. Muiruri is going to take us through the sick physician in preparation for tomorrow's World Anesthesia Day. And there's also going to be a bit of a presentation in regards to the same. We also have the team from Britam, headed by Rose Mutiso and Samson Ouma, who are also going to take us through financial wellness. So it serves to be a very interesting evening. I welcome you guys once more, from the family of anesthesia to even the participants who are outside of the country and everyone else who has joined. A special mention to Shelmith for organizing these meetings flawlessly, and to the previous moderators. You make this work seem so much easier. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Muiruri as we just put up his slide. He's a consultant physician anesthesiologist. He also happens to be the CPD convener, the Nairobi division of the KMA, the chairman and a lecturer in the Department of Medical Physiology at Kenyatta University. And he also serves as a council member in the Education Committee in KSA. And furthermore, he is sitting in the Welfare Committee of the WFSA of the World Society Federation of the Anesthesiologists. So we're very excited to see what he has to discuss today in the topic that has been termed the sick physician. So if you just give us one more minute, we're just going to put up his slide. Reminded that you should put your mics, or you should mute your mics. Also your videos, kindly stop your videos so that we can give as much bandwidth to Dr. Kinyango for the presentation. For any comments and questions, kindly feel free to post in the chat box, and we'll be able to take the questions in the Q&A session. So without further ado, Dr. Kinyango, welcome.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for giving this opportunity to me to make this presentation. It has been quite an honor, especially being recognized by the WFSA to act in the Physicians' Wellbeing Committee. This was done, it was a competitive action where we applied last year, and the nominations came through and the appointments came through in July 22nd this year. And that came with the nominations from the society. That's why I would like to congratulate and thank the society for having supported my bid to get into that. The theme for today was the sick physician, and as we go along, we'll see why I had selected that theme for the sick physician. Otherwise, it is meant to be a preamble for us to commemorate the World Health Day, which is going to be held tomorrow. Next slide. The outline of my talk, which will take around 19 minutes, it will be statistics, the definition of health, the sick physician, the risks in anesthesia, the support structures that are proposed, and then we go to the World Advocacy Day, which will be held tomorrow. That will be all. Next slide. When you look at the World Anesthesia workforce map, you find that Kenya, we are in dire need of anesthetists. If you look at that slide, you'll find that the requirement by WHO is normally 20 physician anesthetists out of 100,000. In Kenya, we are 202, that was of last year. So you find that works out to 0.44%. It's not even one person full for 100,000. So that means you are in dire need for anesthesia providers. There are also other cadres who are listed. We have physicians, the surgeons. Why we have listed their physicians and the surgeons is because we also provide services for them, because as we are service providers in most of the areas. Next slide. The definition of health by WHO was first coined in 1946 and confirmed, put in the statutes in 1948. That is in a meeting in New York. And health is defined as the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And it's not merely the absence of disease. You'll notice that I have highlighted the physical, mental, and social well-being, because those three, if any of them is deranged, that is when you start saying that somebody is ill or sick. The enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being without distinction of race, religion, political belief, or economic or social condition. So you should not deny somebody services or to be healthy by discriminating them according to their belief. Next slides. The other definition which I found during my research when I was told to give this talk is one by osteopathic medicine, where they put the body and function together. This sometimes physiologists use it, where they say the body is a unit and the person is a unit of body, mind, and spirit. The body is capable of self-regulation, self-healing, and health maintenance. So when you're healthy, you're able to do all these by yourself. But when the function and structure are deranged, then you find that you are considered ill or sick. And the rational treatment is based on the structure and function. Next slide. The sick physician. I had put that question there just to find out why people would want to go and treat people when they're sick, and to find out whether you as physicians, you would want to be treated by somebody who is sick. From my side, I'm able to see the poll. We give it, we have 30% of the vote. Let's close maybe to close to 90%. Just continue voting. It is interesting. People are polling quite well. The polling is closed, and thanks for closing the polling. The poll results, since I can see, you can see the results. Majority of the people, 80% are no, and then you see 4% there is yes, 7% and maybe 13%. This is what most other studies have found, and this is what has made people introduce measures of the well physician, because a sick physician, you see, no one, out 80% of the ones who have polled, no, the ones who have voted, would not want to be treated by a sick physician. And that is why we thought the communication about sick physician is better than communicating about healthy physician, because everybody assumes that all physicians are healthy. Next slide. Why did we say the sick? In one study that was done in 2006, somewhere in Sweden, there is an outcome where the medical profession is one of the most unattended populations in terms of healthcare. And this was done by comparing people who are doing occupational health, and they did a research among dentists and doctors where they found that physicians don't take care of their own. They will take care of others, and they are not able to think that they are sick, and then they go ahead and fall ill, and when they fall ill, they don't know. The second thing why sick physicians are a pointer to today's talk is because majority of the sick physicians are in denial because they think of the grave outcome that might come. If you have a headache, the first thing you think of is that maybe you might be having a cranial aneurysm, you might be having a meningioma. So they are first in denial, so they will not seek help. The other one is, as a physician, if there is normally fear of lacking confidence from colleagues and patients. If people were to, sorry about that. If people are to learn that you're healthy, or if you're sick, then they'll never even, like for anesthetists, they'll never call for you cases, that they'll refer even patients once they know they are sick, they will not want to be touched by you. So when somebody is sick, they try to hide and they don't want to be seen to be sick. The other one is about fear of licensure. If people know you have a mental problem or you have a drug addiction or you have diabetes and you are not well maintained, they will not want to license you till you are healthy. And there are many studies which have been done where many boards now they are reviewing their policies on licensure, where they say that if you are on medication, then you can be given the license. But if you are not well controlled, if the illness that you have is not well controlled, then you are denied. So they are trying to change that because initially if you had a history of mental health, then there is no way somebody would going to insure you. The other one is something called physician personality, where you are the physician. You are seen as if there is no way a physician can be sick. The other one is the survivor mentality, where you assume that whatever small ailments that you're having, they are going to be through with the time. And this normally mainly applies to residents, where you find that residents say, all these problems are coming to me because once I finish, they might be okay. The other one is the physicians are programmed to cope, where if other people have done it, so you should be able to do it. Whatever worst outcome comes, then you're able to continue working. Whether you are ill or not, whether you're having a headache, you continue working. Continue to the next slide. Yeah, that is one other study where patients and not doctors get sick. And this was for physicians who are in a long time in hospital who are studied. And some of the reasons why they were not, they were refusing to go to seek for treatment was some of the things that I've explained before. Next slide. Now, when we come to anesthetic practice, our risk, this slide is borrowed from WFSA, the Physicians Wellbeing Committee, and their risks are classified according to around 6 items. And the first kind of risk is stratified according to the anesthetic practice. And this anesthetic practice, our practice of anesthesia makes people vulnerable. You are having chronic occupational stress, psychosocial disorders. You find that people get up into drug addiction. And then there is the one for ergonomic, because of you keep on sitting, moving all the time, sitting, and you end up having back problems and other problems because you are seated most of the time. The other risk is biological agents, where you have infections, pathogens, viruses, and in this era of COVID-19, if you have COVID, you're wondering whether you're going to spread it to the patient or the patient is going to spread it to you, because the infections is both ways. The other one is about safety and physical agents, and we are all taught about cylinders and fires in operating theaters. Some of us these days, you find that going to the MRI room makes a lot of noise. You don't want to go near there. Among our people who are in the reproductive age, they fear going to rooms which have ionizing radiation. So those are some of the risks that we encounter. The ones are related to work standards. These are organizational. Like depending whether you're working in a public hospital or you're working in a private hospital, the calendar, whether you're going to working alone or you are going to be relieved, whether you're working two people, and then violence in the hospital. If maybe you're not doing your work well, then sometimes patients tend to get violent. The one is chemical agents. We have the agents we use for cleaning and all that. Next slide. There are some pointers to illness which us as colleagues, physicians, were able to pick from a person who is ill, how to identify a sick physician. And they are classified according to the classification that was used by WHO, where there is physical, mental, and social. Spiritual is also there. Now, for the physical, you can find when somebody is constantly coming late to work, they end up staying again late. Sometimes they don't have the proper work ethics. You find that there could be something happening with them. The other one, they start getting somatic diseases, gastroenteritis. You get people who keep on having headaches all the time, backaches, and all that. So when something is regular and they are not seeking treatment, then you start knowing there could be something problem. The other one is about grooming. You'll find somebody who was perfectly used to be well groomed, tie and suit. All of a sudden, he starts having shabby hair, not shaved. If it's a lady, they used to dress well, they used to have perfume, and all of a sudden now they are not doing that, they're not taking care of the hair. Then you go and find somebody who was not eating before, they start eating a lot. So those are some of the physical things. I know some of you have experienced people who come to work like this. So those are normally pointers to somebody who is a sick physician, and they normally require help. Mental, you have memory lapses, you'll have tremors, that is traumas, but tremors, you'll have other delusional states or confusion of the patients they are going to treat, then you know there is a problem. There are others, pointers, which are spiritual, where you find people start saying that somebody is going into a cult, or they are going to church on a daily basis, neglecting their duty. They stop believing in God or a higher being. They change, then you know there is a problem that is coming in. The other one is social. Social, where you have people starting to neglect their families, they are not going home, they start divorcing, they start fighting at families and all that. And also among social, that's where we have also the financial component. You are working and then your neighbors are comparing you with the surgeons. So they say you must be taking money somewhere. You find somebody starting to borrow money or starting to being auctioned and all that, that financial stability, and that is why we had invited Britam, or Britam invited us such that we can sort out, tell us how to get this financial independence. Next. Now, that is another question that I had put there, where we have asked, have you gone to work when not feeling too well? But if it was a social function, you would have called in sick in the last 3 months. Okay, we can put them even the last 3 months before. Yeah, we have 45% of the people have voted. We have 50. If we reach 75 or over 70% of people voting, I think would be quite in order to make some conclusions. Okay. Polling has closed, and as you can all see, most of you have been going to work when sick, but if it was another function, you couldn't have gone. And remember the first question, most of you said you wouldn't want to be treated by a person who is sick. So imagine if it was yourself going in there. That's why we need to make sure that the physicians' well-being committees and strategies that are put in place, you can see from this poll alone, it needs to be advanced very seriously, because you can see 72% have gone to work when they are not feeling well. Next slide. We had talked about the risks, and if those risks are not checked, they can lead to outcomes. Most of the time, they are normally not good. They can lead to what we call the burnout syndrome, which you have the moral duty to go and work, but you can't go out. So you keep on working till you get burnout. That is also the same one that is also called compassion disorder. Compassion disorder means when you have been taking very seriously ill patients, cancer patients, or patients who have been involved in trauma, people who are in violent or accidental deaths, if you're working at the accident and emergency. So we call that still compassion disorder, but all of it is, it's also an occupational hazard. That's why it's called, and it affects physicians more than even the relatives of patients a lot. It also has the name called the moral injury, where you have to keep on working despite you not feeling quite well. And this can lead to car accidents. You go and find physicians keep on having accidents, especially after nights. You find people sleep on the road. Can lead to severe psychological psychiatric disorders, anxieties, depression, and then some can go into drug abuse, which is normally an escape mechanism. And some people even think of killing themselves because they have no place to be helped, because you want to still go and work, and people don't want you not to stop working. Next slide. There are some counterproductive physician behaviors that they try, where you go and find like you don't sleep well, and you don't sleep well because you have been out working. Lack of nutritious food because you don't have time to eat. Lack of physical exercise because you are throughout in a cycle of work. If it's not reviewing patients, you are in theater. If you're not in theater, you're back reviewing patients. And then using a lot of dependence on stimulators. You find in most theaters, you go and find people walking around with cups of coffee, caffeine, tea, and all that. So dependence on that is a slow trigger to show that you're going into burnout and all that. Then you find that if you have a health problem, you ignore your own health for an extended period. Next slide. Now, the support and preventive measures that we can offer these sick physicians, there are many. One is responsibility. It should be for other doctors, ask colleagues to cover another doctor when they are sick. You'll find that when a doctor calls in sick, especially like for the residents, they are sick, you'll find no other resident wants to cover for them, or a doctor. And this normally happens a lot in the public hospital when a person wants to cover. In the private hospitals, you'll find that people don't want to cover because of they are seeing the loss of income. But that should not be the case. You should make sure that you cover for each other. Patient education and understanding. We must understand, tell the patients, advise them that doctors are human and can call in sick, and not anyone's best interest for a sick doctor to treat a sick patient. Transparency. It is commonplace for clinic or hospital staff to tell patients that doctors are busy on call or out of other reasons, and doctors take a sick leave. Others should be allowed to tell patients that a doctor has taken a sick, and this will help to understand that doctors are not superhuman. This sometimes people keep on lying to other people that you are still around. Self-care. Self-care is that as physicians, we should have routine checkups. Primary care physicians, somebody who is responsible for you yearly, frequent healthy visits. I was going to put another question asking how many people have gone for a checkup maybe in the last 2 years, but there was no time for that because the time I was given was quite minimal. So self-care is quite important, and we should practice that. And then for the surgeons, they should be able to reschedule surgeries when they are sick, because sometimes they keep quiet and they don't want to schedule a case, even when the anesthetist they work with is normally sick. Next. Yeah. Okay. There was a blank slide which was before that, but that was to make me show that we have now finished part 1 of our talk. Now we go to the part 2, which is the World Anesthesia Day, which is happening tomorrow. And the theme of tomorrow's day is physicians' well-being. And there were activities that were suggested, and that is what I wanted to go through with you. One was to encourage, we talked to ask colleagues, the way I'm doing it now, about your well-being. Make sure you go being checked and have that. Create a well-being social opportunity. I don't know how we are going to do that, but we'll see how we do it after this talk and after everybody goes in. Join the social media conversation by filling a poster, which I'll show you in one of my next slides, and sharing the well-being tips. And those well-being tips are also ahead, I'll show you, where you just put one and then you put your name and the country in your place. And that is where you share the photos with the hashtags which are indicated: World Anesthesia Day, our well-being, World Anesthesia Day 2020, and you can tweet at WFSA.org. And this is not only for the society to tweet, it is for all the physicians concerned who feel that they need to put advocacy so that the institutions can recognize that physicians get ill, and sometimes you get treated by physicians who are sick. Next slide. That is the poster that I was saying that you put in. I wish I was having the cursor, but you can see, can read through it. It is written 16th October 2020, WFSA. Okay, I've been given a lighter. You can see here, this is where you're going to put the well-being statements, which I'm going to show you. And then this is where you write your country. And you can even here write your name if you want to be mentioned, or if you're anonymous, you just leave it that way. You can add on this part, you can add Kenya Anesthesia Society of Anaesthesiologists. You can add your name, a tweet at your name, and all that once you put that. Next slide. These are some of the examples of the occupational well-being practices which can be used on that previous poster. That as so-and-so, I take routine breaks, talk to my colleagues about my well-being. As so-and-so, I raise concerns about stress with my seniors, encourage a good work-life balance in my department. I look after my fellow anesthesiologists, especially this comes in, especially with the residents where you go and find the seniors believe that the juniors are still very young and they're able to achieve more. So it's good to look after the young ones. They also have a lot of stresses in their life. Implement workplace risk assessments. I learn to say no to calls if you feel you are no longer in good shape. Feed and hydrate yourself properly during the workday. I work on emotional intelligence, assertive communication, collaborative work, empathy, and compassion. These are some of the suggested occupational well-being practices which you can print on that poster, or you can print on another poster and then put it in the walls of the theaters or the ICUs or the casualties and say this is coming from the Kenya Society of Anaesthesiologists. And I know you also have many others which you can suggest, which can be included in the practices which can be adopted. Next slide. These are some of the resources which you can get as an anesthetist, which are veiled by the WFSA. There is this one particular book, this Occupational Wellbeing in Anesthesiologist. This was delivered in 2014, 2016, so it is quite recent. And it is quite elaborate on the things that affect anesthetists. And I would encourage all of you to read this book. It is available online. You can read through it. These are the materials, fight campaign materials by the Association of Anesthetists, that is in England. And this is also available online. This other one, Maslach Burnout Kit for Medical Personnel. This one, you have to buy it. And I would encourage institutions to buy this for their people to have it in their libraries. But it is also a quite toolkit for use. There is this other one, which is also available on the website. And it is quite a good one for it. All these have been provided by the WFSA. And then there is an alert letter from the WFSA Professional Wellbeing Committee, which is also available on the website. Next, please. Those are the references, some of them. There are many others I never put there. Next. Now, any ideas for World Anesthesia Day tomorrow, 2020? If you have, you can send feedback right on the chat, and then we can see how to progress about it. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kinganga, for that educative presentation. It's always a good reminder to us, especially in the current times that we're facing, to know that we also need to take care of ourselves. There was a point in time where I thought you were personally talking to me, especially about the coffee bit. I'm glad that, you know, this comes at a time where it's very important for all of us to just remember some of these practices and to put them into place. It's now currently 6:45. There's a slight addition to the program, considering tomorrow is the World Anesthesia Day. I'd like to hand over just for a few brief moments to Dr. Nabalindo, who serves as the Secretary of KSA, a pediatric anesthesiologist and a lecturer at University of Nairobi, just to give us just a bit more on what we can also do as a family, as a fraternity, as a group of people who are interested in taking care of ourselves, and how we can support each other more. So Dr. Nabalindo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sally. Thank you, Dr. Muiruri, for the wonderful presentation. I will not take much time from the presenters. Mine is just to mention a bit of what we plan to do tomorrow for the campaigns of the World Anesthesia Day. For the rest who are not physician anesthesiologists, we would like Anesthesia Day is occupational wellness for anesthesiologists. This particular day, as we all know, is marked every 16th of October. So as a society, in the last few days, there have been activities going on, both in print media and on TV. Some of you must have seen that, on awareness, making the public aware of what anesthesia is and advocacy for anesthesia. Those were part of the activities that were going on. I will not deliver a lot on the theme and what WFSA is asking us to do. Dr. Muiruri has done that on the side. So we encourage you, both physicians and non-physician anesthesia practitioners, to go to the WFSA website, get the poster. You can write your statement there, take a photo with yourself or just of your statement, and either share with us at KSA or directly to the WFSA. Take photos of your activities for tomorrow. Are you sharing a cake for the World Anesthesia Day? Take a photo and send it to us, either through our social media platforms or through our website, through WhatsApp groups. We shall then help you to get them to the WFSA Twitter handle. Tomorrow evening, we shall also mark the day by having host a Facebook event. We shall give you the timings where we shall talk of the strategies anesthesiologists in the country have used to keep safe and well during this pandemic. We have a presenter from the Kenya Society of Anaesthesiologists. The information will come to you and we shall share, and we ask you to please join us on the Facebook event tomorrow in the evening. Thank you very much. And from the Executive Committee of the Kenya Society of Anaesthesiologists, we wish you a happy World Anesthesia Day in advance. Thank you. Sally, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Nabelindo. Sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to joining the conversation, even in our various places of work, seeing how we can all participate together. I mean, right now we're at 150 participants. You know, it's always good to know that we come here Thursdays just to meet, to feel that sense of camaraderie, despite the fact that we're not physically meeting. So looking forward to tomorrow. Now moving on to the second part of the presentation, I'm pleased to invite Rose Mutiso, who is a business development executive at the Britam Asset Managers, who's had 8 years of experience in the investment field. She's particularly in the health sector, and she's coming today, my apologies for that, and she's coming today to speak on financial wellness, because that also forms part of the wellness that we saw. Her client base includes a lot of doctors, hospitals, both private hospitals and clinics, and she has helped them in their financial management. And it's particularly good even for us young doctors coming, residents and students and other people even outside of anesthesia, and all the people who've come today just to hear what she has to say for this. And she's also going to be with her colleague, Samson Ouma, who will talk to us about professional indemnity. Rose, the floor is now yours.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Sally, and good evening to all. I believe we are all well and keeping safe. My name is Rose Mutiso, and kindly allow me to present my screen so that we can go through the presentation for the evening. All right. Confirm you can see my presentation, Dr. Sally?
Yes, I can see the presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. So my name is Rose Mutiso. I work with Britam Asset Managers. I'm specifically aligned to the health sector, and it's always a pleasure for me every other time I get a moment to talk to, you know, clients and specialists in this particular sector. So today we'll go through, we'll have a discussion around financial wellness. And my contents on my presentations will include the following agenda. We'll just a brief introduction to who Britam is, what it is that we do. Then we go deeper into the discussion on financial wellness, look at what the components that actually inform this whole financial wellness idea. Then my colleague Samson Oma will wrap it up with a discussion around professional indemnity covers, which I believe is a necessary cover to our areas of practice and our careers. So I'll go straight and start with an introduction to who Britam is and what it is that we do. So the Britam Group Holdings is a listed company at the stock exchange with presence in 7 countries in Africa. We offer a wide range of financial solutions that is in life insurance, general insurance, health, retirement planning, and asset management. So this forum today is specifically being represented by the asset management business and general insurance. So we are ideally looking at what asset management does, the investment options that we offer, and ideally what investments are out there in our country today. So just to give a brief background again about the Britam Asset Managers Company, we are simply a fund manager, this is simply the investment subsidiary of the Britam Holdings Group. The company was incorporated in 2004, and we simply offer an investment advisory services to individuals and institutions out here. We are a licensed fund manager regulated by the Capital Markets Authority and the Retirement Benefits Authority, because we also do pension management services. We've grown over the years. Like I said, the company was incorporated in 2004, and currently we are managing assets worth 200 billion Kenya shillings. That's how much Kenyans out there have entrusted with us for us to invest for them out there. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what Britam is, and Britam Asset Managers, which is mainly the reason why we are here today to discuss areas around investments. I think it's also important, it's key for you to know the key stakeholders of this, the listed company. Like I said, we are a listed business, and these are the 3 key shareholders of Britam, the Britam Holdings. So the first one, we have the International Finance Corporation. This is simply the investment subsidiary of the World Bank Group. They own 8.9% of the Britam. Then we have Africa Invest, which is simply a partnership of 3 different countries that came together to form a private equity firm to invest into Africa. So that's why it's specifically called Africa Invest, because they are focused on investing in Africa. So Britam is one of the companies that have identified in Africa, and they actually own 26.7% a stake of Britam as a company. So as we speak, that is the biggest shareholder of the business. Then lastly, we have Swiss Re. Swiss Re is the second largest reinsurance company globally. Swiss Re owns 15.8% of Britam. So if you look at that cumulative shareholding, that comes to about 51%. And I believe we all agree that's quite a major stake that they collectively control of Britam, the listed company. So that's what Britam is in a nutshell, and what it is, the business that we are into, and who are the main shareholders of the business. So to kickstart our presentation, we have a question, considering we are talking about finances, and I believe we all had financial goals and plans when the year was starting. So if you look at your screen, you can just participate on the poll, and the question is simply, are you on track with your 2020 personal financial goals? So we all had plans we wanted to achieve this year. So give us feedback. Let's see how that is going for you. Are you on track? Let's see how this is going. So kindly participate in this poll. Then this will help now introduce and preempt. This is definitely to preempt the discussions we are going to have around the financial wellness today. Good. So far we have yes at 15%. So 15% of us today are on track, which is quite commendable. No, we have 48% who are not on track with your financial goals for the year. And in typical Kenyan fashion, we have some of us who definitely have to blame it on COVID-19. So that 7% of us say, yes, we did have personal financial goals, but COVID-19 happened, and that sort of, stalled the process of, and our plans in terms of achieving our goals. So thank you for that, Shalmith. I think I'll go to the next, I'll kickstart the presentation. Thank you so much, Daktari. So I'll go straight, and apologies for that. So I'll go straight into financial wellness, just a small description what it is about. Then we'll go deeper into the components or the areas, the financial areas that actually inform or help us achieve what financial wellness is. So financial wellness is simply a balance of the mental, spiritual, and physical aspects of money. It's not about numbers. It's about knowing you have control over your finances in the short term, and that you're set up to achieve your long-term goals. It's about your health and wealth and the overall quality of the life that you're living. Next slide, please. So yes, just the next slide. So to inform, we have key financial areas that actually inform our areas, help us achieve financial wellness. So the financial quadrant is a very powerful tool or a very powerful model that highlights the key different financial areas that inform our financial wellness and our financial health as individuals. So if you can look at these areas, we have expenses, we have savings and investments, we have insurance, which is ideally protection, and then we have retirement planning. So these are the key financial areas that help us as individuals, that help us achieve financial freedom, and that when taken good care of and well managed, then this leads us definitely to financial wellness. So for today, we will discuss, we will go deeper into savings and investments. We'll just briefly look at expenses, insurance, and retirement. Please to note, these are very diverse areas that we definitely need more sessions to actually go deeper and have deeper discussions on these areas. But you will actually note that as I go about my presentation, we'll discuss more about savings and investments for this session. So next slide, please. Expenses. So ideally, expenses should not take up more than 30 or to 40% of your total income as an individual. And budgeting is the best method of accounting for every bit of every penny that you earn in terms of income. So I believe we all do budgeting. If you do not, it's a good way to actually account for all the income that you get on a monthly, quarterly, on a daily basis. So budgeting is quite key, because here you're looking at the income that's coming into your pocket and how you're actually utilizing this money that you're getting on a day or every other day, every other month. So budgeting is quite a very powerful tool that we need to be able to account for the money that's coming in. So ideally, I know in our budgets, we normally look at the key expenses. So look at food, look at maybe school fees, account for shelter, that is rent ideally. But it's important to actually introduce three key things into your monthly budgets, or depending with how frequent that you do your budgeting. Number one, consider introducing an emergency fund provision in your budget. Ideally, COVID has come to show us that we actually need to have a backup plan. Whether you're an individual or a business, you need to have savings that will actually help you go about your normal life if, for example, your income would come to a stop. Make a provision for debt reduction. So if you've borrowed, if you have debt somewhere, make sure that every other month, as you budget, you're making a provision to actually make sure that your debt is well managed and it's actually reducing every other time. Retirement savings. Always ensure that you're always saving for the biggest holiday of your life, which is upon retirement. Now, when it comes to understanding money, we have two types of income. We have active income and we have passive income. Active income is ideally money that we work for, that money that we wake up every day, put in the effort, put in the knowledge, put on the energy to actually have this income coming through. So this might be your monthly paycheck or your professional fees, for example. If you run a business, this might be the profits that come through your business. But we also have passive income. Passive income on the other side is ideally having your money working for you. So this is the income that comes through having whatever it is that you've earned on your active income working for you and earning you an extra coin. So rental income, probably you have properties somewhere that are earning you rent on a monthly basis. Dividend income, you've invested in shares in the stock exchange, you earn an annual dividend. Fixed deposits, probably you've done a fixed deposit with a bank somewhere and you get the interest. So ideally, when passive income exceeds your monthly expenditure, then an individual can be said to have attained financial freedom. So as you go about our expenses, as you go about making income, it's ideal for individuals for us as individuals to make sure that as we actively look for this income, we also have money that is passively earning us extra income. Next slide, please. Insurance. So this is the other area of financial wellness. Simply means protect what you have. So you work hard every day to make your life better, to make sure that your finances are in place, to grow your wealth at the end of the day. So make sure that you're well protected as an individual, and also make sure you protect your loved ones, protect your family, and at the end of the day, also protect what it is that you've acquired over the years as an investor. So simply that's what insurance is, and I believe we know the different types of insurance out there, and we endeavor to protect the little that we have or the much that we've accumulated over the years. Next slide, please. Thank you. Retirement. This is the biggest holiday of your life. Are you prepared? Questions to be asking yourself: will your existing pension arrangement, if you have one, number one, do you have a pension arrangement? And number two, is it likely to maintain your living standards when you retire? Those are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves as we work towards retirement. Now, wealth expectancy is the wealth one can expect to attain at their peak. We also have wealth aspiration, which is what you aspire to attain to live comfortably in retirement. The difference between your wealth expectancy and your aspiration is what we call the wealth expectancy gap. So sit down, analyze your wealth, analyze your finances, get the difference, how far behind are you in terms of the wealth expectancy gap, and start working on it so that by the time you get into your retirement, you've actually achieved your wealth aspiration savings. Statistics say 66% of Kenyans are likely to achieve less than half of their wealth aspiration at retirement. That's quite a big percentage, I believe, and we all agree. Above 50%, that's quite a very alarming number. Next slide, please. So today, like I said, we will focus on savings and investments. There's a very big difference between what a savings is and what an investment is. Savings is simply preserving money for future use in cash, and an investment on the other side is buying assets whose value can fluctuate. It is recommendable for an individual to always save at least 20 to 30% of your total income. So whatever income that you get monthly, depending with how frequent you earn your income, at least endeavor to save at least 30% of that income that you make. Savings are a key component of financial security, but are impossible to do without managing expenses. So as much as you're strong on your savings, also ensure that you're managing your expenses and your debt to the best of your ability, so that you have a balance between the two. Savings and expenses go hand in hand. Next slide, please. Now, as an investor, all investors, we all have a life cycle as an investor. And ideally, we all have a dream as individuals. We all have something we'd want to achieve in future, whether right now, in the short term, or in the long term. So what is your plan? What is your dream as an individual? And what is the cost impact of that dream to your finances? So maybe your dream is to further your education in your area of practice. Maybe it's just to take your children to the best schools out there. Probably you want to start a business, or you have an existing business that you want to expand. Probably you'd want to acquire a property somewhere in the near future, or you'd want to, if you've not yet gone into private practice, it may be your dream to actually open your private practice in the near future. So do you know the cost? Have you assigned a cost impact to that particular dream or that particular goal that you have for the future? Very important. Next slide, please. Now, again, when it comes to these dreams, it is very important to, as you assign a cost to your dream, always assign a time frame to the goal as well. So you might be having immediate goals that can be achieved immediately. Short term, we have medium term, and we have long term goals. So always ensure that whichever goals that you have assign a time frame to it so that to keep you on your toes and push you to ensure that you actually achieve that dream and you do not have to keep postponing. So remember the question where we asked if you're on track with your 2020 financial goals. Some of us are blaming it on COVID. It might be valid, but just let's be genuine. Let's look at our at how the year has been and see whether we've ideally, honestly, just been slacking on our goals and our plans for the year. So assign a time frame to your plan and your dream. Next slide, please. That dream, how do you plan to fund that dream? So remember, you've already assigned a cost to it. So where do you get this money to actually fund that dream, to make it a reality? So do you plan to borrow money to actualize that dream? Is it saving that you will do? Is it investing? Or simply do nothing? You might just have a dream that remains a dream for the rest of your lifetime. So always have a plan on how to actually ideally get the funds or fund this particular dream that you have. Next slide, please. Coming down and making it a bit more practical to you as an investor, and giving an example of a project. Say, for example, you might have a project that will cost you 5 million Kenya shillings that you'd want to attain or achieve in the next 10 years, for example. So you have three options as a dreamer. You have this, for example, might be a piece of land you'd want to acquire in the next 10 years. So how do you raise this 5 million? You have three options. Option number one, you can start saving today so that for the next 10 years, so by the time 10 years are done, you'll actually have your 5 million Kenya shillings having earned zero interest. Remember, we said savings is us having money in cash and not earning you an extra coin. So option number one, you can start saving today and actualize your dream within 10 years with exactly the amount of savings that you've been putting into place. Option number two, you can invest, and working back, you can actually sit and work back and do your projections. I need 5 million Kenya shillings. And ideally, if you were to invest 2.3 million Kenya shillings in an interest-bearing investment, earning you about 8% interest per annum, that would earn you interest of 2.7 million over the period of 10 years. So that means I've invested 2.3. This has given me an extra 2.7. So within 10 years, I've actually attained my 5 million to actualize my project. Option number three, you can decide to borrow. You can decide to borrow that money today, get your 5 million from a credit institution, go borrow a loan. But ideally, if you look at going the borrowing way, you'll end up spending an extra 4 million Kenya shillings because of the interest factor on the loan that you've borrowed. So working with an interest rate of 13% of the loan, we're looking at you spending an extra 4 million besides the 5 million that you've actually borrowed. So I believe from all these analyses, we all agree investing, option number two, would be the most ideal way for us to achieve this plan. So sit down, analyze your plan, and come up with ways or ideal ways or suitable ways to be able to fund that dream in the most optimum way possible. Next slide, please. All right, so when it comes to investments as individuals, we have three different categories. Are you a big saver? So a big saver is someone ideally, at times you might sit down and you feel, maybe I'm being too hard on myself, I'm being too hard on my family. Probably you compare yourself with your peers, with your colleagues, you feel like they are living a certain kind of life that you're not living, just because you've decided to focus on saving. So ideally, your main focus is saving as much as you can from your income. The other category of individuals is big spenders. So these are the individuals that are well known out there. They always appear to be, wealthy, ideally, and the main reason is because from their income, a bigger percentage of their money goes towards spending. So, if you need money, if you need maybe to have a good time or something, you always know there's an individual somewhere who's big on spending. And finally, we have big borrowers. A big borrower is someone probably who's known in all the credit institutions, banks, microfinance institutions. Besides knowing you by name, they now even know you with your ID number because of the number of times you keep going back to them to borrow and borrow and borrow. Like everything about your life is just everything that you actualize in life is dependent on borrowing. So the most ideal, I think the most ideal league would be being a big saver. Have a balance. Borrowing is okay, but have a balance between saving, spending, and borrowing. Next slide, please. As an investor, you do have a life cycle, and we have three phases of the investor life cycle. So we have the accumulation phase, where if you look at the age group for this is ages between 20 to in your 20 to 30s, you are at the accumulation phase of the investor life cycle. So here your main focus as an investor is saving and investing for immediate consumption needs. So here you at least you have the time frame to do longer term investments, and you can also consider high risk investments. Then the other phase is the consolidation phase. If you're in your 40 or in your 40 going towards your 50s, you're in your consolidation phase. Here on this phase, much of your debt has been paid off, and you you now actually start making extra income because most of your debt has been paid off. Probably most of your expenses have also reduced. Maybe you're not paying school fees anymore for your children. So this means more money in your pocket. So this is the main focus for this phase, is now starting to plan for your retirement. So consider moderate risk investments. Primary goal being retirement planning and capital protection. The other final phase is the accumulation phase. So here we are looking at persons within the ages of 60 to 70s. This is ideally after retirement. If you look at the average retirement age, so here you're ideally working and dependent on the income, probably from your pension or the investments you've done over the years, because upon retirement, most of your your normal income is no longer coming through. So here at this phase, you want to focus on capital preservation, because what you have, you're trying to protect. And number two, you need current income to supplement your maybe retirement income. So at this stage, you want to consider pension plans. You'd also consider investing with fixed deposits, where you can access some current income to boost your retirement income. So sit down, analyze where you are in terms of for the investor life cycle, what kind of investments you should be doing, and what your main focus should be at the different stages of the investment. Next slide, please. Now, I'll go into another poll, and the question here is, which of the below investment options have you done or are currently doing? So give us feedback. Let us know which of the listed, which is ideally the options are real estate. Shelmith, maybe you can help me launch the poll. So we have real estate. Are you into business? Are you investing in with government, treasury bills and bonds? Have you tried unit trust investments, fixed deposits with banks? Are you investing with the stock exchange? Maybe you've bought shares for different companies out there. So I think to preempt the next discussions, because now we are going deeper into investments and what options we have out there, it would be good to know what we are doing currently as investors. So Paul, going well. If you look at the bigger number, we have about 40% of us who are doing unit trust and fixed deposits. Then we have 39% of us who are into real estate, 31% are into equities and shares. We have 26% of us who are in business, and finally we have 12% who've invested with the government in treasury bills and bonds. So thank you, Shelmith. Thank you for that poll. That will definitely shed more light on all these investments in my next slide. So next slide, please. What is investing in Kenya? So these are the kind of investments that most of us are doing out here today. These are ideally, we consider this the traditional investments that most of us are into today. So you might be having money in the bank, depending with the account that you have, that might be an investment working for you. Most of us have money, most of us are SACCO members who have saved with the SACCOs. That might be an investment that is working for you. Most of us, like we've all seen, about 39% are into real estate. And I think about the Kenyan culture and how we are brought up is one of the checklists, one of the tick boxes that you've actually been successful in life. One of the things you need to have acquired over the years of working and acquiring wealth is property. So real estate is quite a very common investment option out here. M-Pesa, we have people who keep money in the M-Pesa and consider that investment. And finally, business. So depending with what, well, if you are into business, depending with what area you are in a business is also considered a viable venture in Kenya today. Next slide, please. Now, at the end of the day, as investors, we all want to do a successful investment. We do not want to go into ventures that we end up burning out or we end up losing our money. We all want to succeed in all areas of our life, including our finances, and that's the reason why we have this discussion today. So, tips for successful investment, just 3 things to consider as you go about investments, as you consider taking up investments. 1, always have a financial goal. So if you want to undertake a certain investment, what are you looking at achieving at the end of this particular investment? 2, assign a time frame. I think we already discussed this in the preceding slides. Always have a time frame for your investment. And finally, consider your risk appetite. So remember, when it comes to investments, we have high risk investments, medium risk investments, and low risk investments. So where do you lie as an investor? Are you a high risk investor, or you prefer playing safe and you're a low risk investor who's just looking at having my capital safe and earning the extra coin I can earn on every other day? So always consider these 3 things before you go about your investments. Next slide, please. Now, besides the traditional investments that we've looked into, that is, bank, having money in the bank, and SACCO, we also have other investment options that you can consider out here. And most of this, if you look at this particular slide, we've divided the investments depending on the asset class, the potential return that you're likely to be earning on these investments, the risk profile. Remember, we said risk is quite key for you to consider for a successful investment. Liquidity simply means how quickly can I cash in my money if I needed my money today from a particular investment I have undertaken. And again, time frame. How long is this investment? So 1, we have cash in bank. Most of us have money in the bank, earning interest 0 to 4%, depending with the account that you have. The risk profile for banks is considered low. Again, depending with the bank that you hold. I think we've all seen in the past years, banks come going down with people's money. Liquidity, you can easily access your money in the bank. And the beauty about the bank is you can have your money in the bank for 2 days, 1 month, 2 months. So it's a short-term, it's considered a short-term investment. The other option would be a bank fixed deposit. On average, banks today are paying interest of between 4 to 7% on the fixed deposits. Risk profile, again, low, depending with the bank. Liquidity high, you can access your money in the bank. And again, the thing about deposits is they are fixed investments, so you can either decide to go for either 3, 6, or 12 months. Treasury bills is the other option. This is simply government lending. Anyone investing in a T-bill is simply loaning their money to the government. Average returns, currently the government is offering 6 to 7% per annum, depending with how long you do, because we have a 3 months T-bill, 6 months, or a 12 months T-bill. If you look at the risk profile, it's considered quite low. Ideally, government is considered one of the safest institutions to invest with, because the idea behind that is if anything was to happen to the government, they still have, even if the government was to go broke, they still have muscle to borrow from out there and pay back the debt that they owe to the public. So risk profile is quite low. Liquidity is high because it's a short-term investment and you can also cash in at any point. We have unit trust funds. These are funds that ideally are offered by fund managers. One of them being Britam, the reason why we are here today. We have different unit trust funds that give an average return of between 8 to 10% per annum. Risk profile is low, but again, that is dependent with the company you're investing with. Make sure you do your due diligence just to make sure that you're comfortable with the investment that you're doing. Let's not just chase a return. Let's make sure that the company prospects are looking good for you as an investor. Liquidity, very high. The thing about unit trust funds is they are open-ended, not locked investment. You can always cash in at any point and you get back your money. Treasury bonds, this is another form of government borrowing. Ideally, a bond is long-term borrowing and a treasury bill is short-term borrowing. So if you look at bonds, we have 5-year bonds, 10, 20-year bonds. And the average return is between 10 to 13% per annum, depending with the bond that you're investing into. Risk profile, like I said, government is considered quite safe, so that's low. Liquidity is medium. The thing about bonds is when it comes to cashing in your money, it's not as easy as just going and getting back your money back. It might take some time. So the thing about bonds is consider going to bonds knowing if you really need money as soon as you can. It might take some time. So it's a long-term investment. Equities and stocks. So look at the returns. We all know what shares are. The returns on average are between negative to positive 20%. So if you just look at the return, that definitely informs the risk profile on equities. So equities are considered very high risk investments, and the liquidity is also medium. You can always cash in your shares at any point when you feel like. The thing is, will you be selling it at a premium? Will you be selling it at a loss? So equities are recommendable to go for long-term investment. And the other thing we've looked at is land and property. This is real estate, like we mentioned. On average, the return on this asset class is 1 to 7%, depending with the area of real estate you're investing with. Risk profile, medium. Liquidity, low. We all know how hard it is to cash in money from property investment. So that's considered a long-term investment again. Next slide, please. Now, coming down to Britam and what it is that we offer for investments, something that you can consider as an individual. If you've not done unit trust investments before, if you have money in the bank, something you can consider and actually start right away. So I'll briefly speak to you about our Britam Money Market Fund and our Wealth Management Fund. These are considered our short-term investment options. So to start with our Britam Money Market Fund, this is simply works like a bank account. So the same way you have money in the bank earning you interest of 0 or earning you 4%, it's the same concept, but ideally if you have your money within the Britam Money Market Fund, we've invested the money for you to earn a return. All right, so it is suitable for money you don't need for at least 2 weeks. All right, you can go for as long as you wish to. If you want to invest for 6 months, a year, 2 years, it's an open-ended investment. It's ideal for emergency fund savings. So remember, we've spoken to why it's important to have an emergency fund. It's important to have a backup plan for whether you're an individual or a business. Always have money set aside for emergencies. Now, the way it works is it has a daily interest rate, and this interest rate is informed by how the market is performing. So the market is simply where we invest this money for you. So the money is invested, I'll tell you 70% of the money is invested with government. So we are looking at government bonds and treasury bills. We also do bank fixed deposits, but we're very specific with the banks that we work with. So the returns that we get from this market is what informs the daily rate for the money market fund. On average, the return is normally between 8.5 to 9.5% per annum. So it is an annual rate, but prorated and calculated on a daily basis. Simply meaning, if you had your 500,000 in money market fund today, you'd be earning an extra coin each and every other day the money is invested with us. The other benefit is we compound the interest you earn on a daily basis. That means if I earn interest today, Britam is telling me that I'll actually tomorrow I'll earn interest also on the interest I earned on the previous day, besides my capital investment. You can access your money. It's an open-ended fund. You can liquidate at any point. Just give instructions within 48 working hours. The money is transferred to your bank or your M-Pesa, depending on which platform you prefer receiving your money with. Minimum investment with 1,000 Kenya shillings, you can actually invest in our money market fund today. The other option would be the wealth management fund. This is simply our fixed deposit option. So remember, money market, it's not fixed. You can cash in at any point, and the wealth management fund on the other side, it's for predetermined cash needs. So if you're certain that I do not need to utilize these funds maybe for the next 3 months, for the next 6 months or 12 months, wealth management would be ideal for you. If you look at the returns we are offering currently, our indicative rates are 9%, whether you do 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. So our rates have dropped because COVID has really impacted the prevailing interest rates in the market. Actually, we've been seeing interest rates coming down since April. So this is what we are offering currently, but you normally have weekly offers and you normally have better returns than we're having right now. So 9% still quite competitive. The minimum investment to start for the fixed deposit is 1 million Kenya shillings. And the beauty about it is, if you lock in your money for 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year, we are still telling you can access your money even before maturity. So that means you'd be breaking a contract. And for this, we only apply a penalty of 3%, less the rate when you break the contract. This puts you at an edge as an investor, considering if you were to do, for example, a fixed deposit to the bank and you were to liquidate or cancel the contract before maturity, we all know that with the bank, you forfeit or you lose the entire interest, you get back your principal. But Britam is just telling you, fine, you can break the contract, you will still get some interest, only that it is less 3% the interest we had offered you initially. So it's a win-win at the end of the day. You still get back your money with something extra. And the other benefit is we can pay you interest monthly. So if you fix your money for 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year, you do not have to wait until maturity for you to access interest. So if you're looking at an investment where you can be accessing some regular income and while your capital is still working for you, either our money market fund or our wealth management fund both have the option to access the interest on a monthly basis. So this is something you can take up immediately. If you have money in the bank earning 0 to 4%, if you are in a fixed deposit, banks are currently offering, like I've highlighted, between 4 to 7%. Britam is here today to offer you 9% on your investment. Next slide, please. Just to compare ourselves with the market, I believe it's prudent for us as investors to always make sure that we are getting the best returns out there. As you do your due diligence, make sure that you've compared the options out there to make sure that you're getting the optimum return that you can. So compared to, if you look at the Britam return compared to treasury bills and bank deposits, I believe we can all agree Britam is giving a high return on average between 8.50 to 9.5%. The other thing as investors to consider is inflation. So inflation is simply the general increase in the price of goods and services. So whenever you're undertaking an investment, it is ideal, it is recommendable, it is advisable for you to always do an investment that gives you a return that is higher than the inflation rate, because that means if the prices of goods is going up with 4.2% and I'm earning a return of 8%, it simply means I'm simply still able to afford whatever goods I can afford with, for example, 10,000 Kenya shillings right now. So always ensure, one of the things, again, you consider while undertaking an investment is, what is the inflation rate? Am I getting a return higher than inflation? Tick. Then look into the other things. Next slide, please. Making it practical so that you can see, compared to the market out there, how much, for example, if you had 1 million Kenya shillings, you'd be earning in Britam in comparison with treasury bills, for example, and the bank fixed deposit. So I believe we can all see the return in Britam is much. You'll actually earn some extra income in comparison with what you're currently earning in the bank or with the government if you've invested with treasury bills. Next slide, please. I'll invite you into a poll. I'm done on discussing on the investments. So Shalment, if you can help me launch this poll. And the question simply is, from the information you've gathered on this from this session, would you invest with Britam? Is it something that you would consider to actually take up either of the investments that we've discussed today? So feel free, kindly give us your feedback so that we can see how to progress from this session and see whether to have more and more sessions to enlighten you more and more about these investments options out there. So we have 35% who say they'd actually invest. 4% no. I would really want to know why the 4% would not consider. We have 45% who actually say they need more information. So we'll definitely give you I'll give you my contacts after this session. Get in touch, feel free, call Britam. Speak to us. We are here to assist you and give you more information on your investment. And finally, we have 15% who are already our clients. So thank you for being being supportive and being our clients. And also to confirm, the society is one of our clients. So this is a good thing. So the next poll is Shalment, if you can launch the next poll kindly. So the question for the next poll simply is, if you were to invest with Britam, and based on the questions, on the products that I've spoken to today, which fund would you ideally be interested to invest with? Would it be the money market fund, the wealth management fund, or do you ideally consider both? Remember, money market fund, we said, is my money is not fixed, the interest fluctuates daily, but I still earn interest on a daily basis, and I can cash in at any point. Wealth management, my money is fixed, I have a fixed return for the period. If I can cash in upon maturity, but if I were to break the contract, I would just lose 3% of the interest. So if you look at the results, we have money market fund. 28% of us actually would consider investing in the money market fund. 36% of us would consider going the fixed way, which is investing with the wealth management fund. And we have 36% of us would consider both. So this actually shows us that there is interest from the participants and from the members of the society, which we'll definitely take up after this session. Get in touch with you. We will share our contacts. Feel free, get in touch with us so that we can help you kickstart this investments journey and get this ideally better returns that you've been missing out there. Next slide, please. So to wrap up the whole of this financial wellness talk, we've really spoken about all these financial areas that you need to observe, you need to take care of for you to achieve financial wellness. So what are the indicators that actually tell me as an individual, I am financially well? One, having money when you need it. So when you need, anytime that you have, a need for money, do you actually have a provision for that? Living within your means, you're actually saving money regularly for emergencies and goals. You're investing to achieve long-term goals. You're having no debt, or your debt is manageable. And finally, having adequate insurance for financial risk. So this is sort of like a checklist for you to go through and test yourself on whether you're doing well financially towards achieving financial wellness. Next slide, please. Way forward. So what do we need to do from this session to make sure that at the end of the day, we are all financially healthy investors and individuals? One, have enough money, always have money to pay expenses. Again, set aside money for emergencies. Always set written financial goals. Follow a written spending plan. Calculate your net worth. As an individual, do you know how much your net worth is? That's a very important an important factor of your finances to actually know and work on. Next slide, please. Save and invest regularly for your long-term financial goals. Increase your savings when your income increases. So ideally, if your income, if you actually get extra income, always make sure the number one thing you focus on is increasing your savings. Establish a personal retirement savings account. Make sure that you're working for your retirement. Remember, we've highlighted wealth aspiration and the gap you need to work on. Diversify your investments. Simply do not pull your eggs in one basket. Always make sure that your money is spread out across different investment options out there. And finally, protect what you have. You've worked hard. Make sure that what you have is actually protected, starting with yourself as the investor. Next slide, please. So that is it for investments for this session. I'll introduce my colleague who's the next speaker, who will speak to us about professional indemnity insurance. I believe this is something quite important for us as medical practitioners in our areas of work. So my colleague is Samson Ouma. He's an underwriter in our general insurance company. He will briefly take us through what this is and what it entails. So Samson, you're welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you, Ross. Good evening, everyone, and I hope I'm audible enough to everyone can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take a maximum of 15 minutes of your time. I see it's quite late, we've gone into the evening. I won't keep you much long. I'll take you through the professional indemnity insurance presentation, a policy we give here at Britam. So maybe to give a small summary on what a professional indemnity currently is. This is a policy that is best suited for professionals like yourselves who execute their mandates or execute their daily duties in a professional manner mostly like in your case is now to save lives, for example. Now, what we are currently noticing in the market or in the industry currently in Kenya is that most Kenyan citizens, or even more people, are now getting our awareness into their rights, how they expect to be treated, what kind of expectations they expect when they visit you while you offer your services, and so on and so forth. So what happens is that whenever something goes wrong, currently we see quite a number of cases and an insurgence of cases going to court, what's being given for negligence, and so on and so forth. So in a nutshell, that's why we come up with this policy. The main aim of this policy is to protect you as you carry out your day-to-day activities whenever you practice. So I'll take, as I mentioned earlier, maximum of 15 minutes, and I'll be done with my presentation. For any questions during the presentation, feel free to post them through the chats. Then we'll go through them at the end of the presentation. The next slide, kindly. So I'll start with definition. So in a layman's language, professional indemnity insurance covers for mistakes made in the course of carrying out your professional duties. So you'll see this word professional duties being repeated severally during the presentation, because what happens is that what we expect of you, you are held to a given standard of expectations. So I'll come to your hospital, for example, or where you practice, and I take my life and put it into your hands. So what I expect is that when I leave out of that place, I'm better as a result of the service you've rendered while I visited you. So it's a form of liability insurance that helps protect professional advice and services individuals and companies from bearing the full cost of defending against a negligence claim made by a client and damages awarded in such civil lawsuit. So we are all humans, and as humans, we are bound to error. So what happens is this policy comes in to protect you against such errors that may happen. These are usually mainly errors of either commission or omission or one way or another. So for example, professionally, you give a wrong prescription and so on and so forth. You do a procedure and forget one step. As a result of that, a patient is hurt or even gets injured, or most of the time they end up dead. So the dependents who are depending on this family will say, no, we will not take this lightly. We decide to take you to court. And generally, recently we see quite a number of awards being given. And if you're not protected, for example, by this kind of insurance, you'll find yourself really, really exposed. So remember initially on the financial awareness training that was just concluded by Rose, what usually happens with most clients, what we see when these costs are awarded by the courts, they rush to their savings, which you've worked so hard to attain over a period of time, to end up going ahead and using those savings to settle some of those costs and claims and so on and so forth. So we try to take up that liability away from you and place it with us, in that in the event that something like that comes in, the policy will kick in and you're fully protected and will take over the costs on your behalf. So the scope of cover is here. It indemnifies the insured against their legal liability to pay compensation as a result of any actual or alleged negligent act, error of omission in the performance of the professional duties of the insured undertaken in the course of their business. So what we usually do, we give you a limit. It's a blanket limit. So you see the limit of liability can be given in two states. The first one is they can give out of a series of claims, in that we usually don't have the advocate for that, because most of the time you'll notice that even you and anesthesiologists usually are regulated. We have a board that governs you. So when you get quite a number of series of claims, it tends to beg and bring some different questions. Number one, are you competent enough to carry out the exercise you're carrying out? Are you competent enough to offer the services you're offering? And so on and so forth. So the first one we do is we give you per claim or series of claims. The second limit we provide is per period of insurance, and so on and so forth. Next slide, kindly. So what other costs do we cover? So we cover legal costs and expenses. These are part of the cover and within the limit of indemnity incurred related to the defense or settlement of a claim. Most of the time when you're sued and the judgment is awarded, what happens is that usually all those legal costs by the defendant usually is pushed to the plaintiff. And as a result of that, you end up incurring very huge costs. So this policy also covers those legal costs. Secondly, it covers loss of documents. This arises from destruction, damage, or loss of any documents, computer records, and reasonable cost and expense incurred in replacing and restoring such documents. The other one is libel and slander. So these are usually written or spoken comments, stock details about a third party. Again, this is nowadays becoming quite common. As much as we have freedom of speech, we are often reminded that it has its limits and boundaries. The last the cost that we cover is dishonest acts of any employee of the insured. So this usually is very much important for those people who have their own private practice that they're running with. So when you have a private practice, you'll realize that you have some employees that usually report to you. Those employees, by law, they're bound to any activity they do, you're bound and you're liable as a result. So if an employee, for example, perpetrates any act of dishonest from any of your clients who came to seek some professional services, again, you're liable for any legal costs or suits that may be awarded as a result of that. Next slide, kindly. So as any given policy, we have what we call exclusions into a policy. The first one is insolvency. So this is what we call economic factors. These are usually not covered. Secondly is willful acts or misdeeds. So if you intentionally decide to hurt someone else intentionally, again, the underlying word being intentional, that is not covered. We also don't cover pollution. If you have a private practice, there are usually standard measures as per NEMA regulations on how maybe waste and so on and so forth should be disposed. So again, if you're sued as a result of pollution, that is not covered. War and terrorism, we don't cover that. Consequential loss, this is not covered. Consequential loss would be a scenario where, for example, you're sued and as a result, you run out of business and you lose all your profit and maybe incur additional expenses. That would not be covered. Political risks, again, we are entering into the same scenario currently, that is not covered. Deductible, we also exclude on this policy, and again, bodily injury, not covered. Then non-prior claims when you're coming to take up the policy. So some of the things we look at when you want or you ask for this policy from Britam would include the limit of indemnity you require. So which kind of limit are you looking for? Are you looking for example, a 10 million shillings limit, 100 million shillings limit, and so on and so forth. Gross fees and gross revenue or fund value. So gross fees and gross revenue would be most applicable. Mainly we look at these scenarios for where we have farms, we have private clinics, and so on and so forth. We also look at the number of trustees you have, for example, in a board. If it's a big facility, for example, a hospital, and so on and so forth. Then we look at the past history. Have you had this kind of claims in the past? And so on and so forth. How many number of qualified employees do you have? Again, this is usually very, very critical. While on boarding stage, you usually ask for the license from the body that governs you, and even academic certification in some of the instances. Again, we look at which kind of applicable deductible am I imposing on your policy or an excess. Are you looking for a retroactive cover, a run-off cover, a reinstatement of covers? And finally, what kind of extensions are you looking for? So in a nutshell, that's what usually we look at when I'm giving you a professional indemnity policy. And those are the main exclusions that are subjected to the policy as well. Next slide. So that marks the end of my presentation. I tried to summarize it as much as possible. It's usually a very wide and interactive topic. We get so many questions and so on and so forth. So we try to make it as short as possible because of the time frame we had. Again, it's a pleasure speaking to you. But remember, mainly currently what the profession indemnity covers is any error of omission or commission that may happen during the course while you execute your professional duties. Again, the current trend we are seeing in Kenya is there are so many cases of lawsuits being taken to court, so many doctors being sued for wrongful acts, and they require compensation as a result of that. Again, some of the hospitals are very strict. If you do any private practice in some of these hospitals, they're very, very strict that you must have a professional indemnity insurance. Secondly, again, I also see for renewal of licenses, some of the boards, for example, KMPDU has been really strict on some of these cases, insisting that the PI insurance must be taken by all their doctors before they start doing any operation. Again, this is mainly just to protect your future career, also protect your financial wealth, and also protect your reputation. It would be quite embarrassing, for example, that you're sued and you may not be able to raise those funds, then you're auctioned as a result of that, as they try to raise funds to go and compensate the third parties. Again, thank you for listening. I would invite questions.
Okay, thank you, Samson. Dr. Sally, I think back to you. That's it for the Britam presentation, and I think we can now invite questions. Maybe if you can go to the next slide so that the participants can actually get our contacts. If you need more information on investments, my number is on your screen, the top option. If you need more information on the professional indemnity covers, feel free, get Samson's contacts, his number and the email address is there. Get in touch. Let's start walking this journey with you. So thank you. And Dr. Sally, back to you.
Thank you so much, Rose and Samson, for that amazing and very insightful presentation. Cognizant of the time, it's now 10 minutes to 8. Thank you all for just bearing with us, considering we went a bit overboard. For the presentation, Dr. Muiruri, there was quite a few people who recognized that it was a wonderful presentation. It was well presented. So again, thank you for that. Dr. Nganga has also said our good health is our most valuable asset. Let's take care of it. Dr. Nabolindo has also reminded that if anyone has any further questions, to post them over here. There's some questions from Sylvia. How much now to Rose in regards to the principal and interest that's taxed on the products that you've discussed? I'm sure you guys have their details on the screen, so you can get in touch with them. Another question is for professional indemnity. Do you offer retrospective cover? That's a very interesting question. I'm insured, but like if I'm sued 5 years from now, will I still be covered, and what happens in that? So I think that's one of the questions. Maybe Samson, very briefly, you can answer about retrospective cover.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for the question. For someone to ask about retrospective cover, I believe they already have an insurance. It's a very technical question, and very much welcome. So maybe to enlighten the other team members, what retrospective cover means is that, for example, currently you are insured, but you've been practicing, for example, for the last 5 years, as Mark mentioned. Then a claim arises 2 years ago, okay, but it's presented now. So the question is, will your policy cover that? So yes, Mark, to answer you, we'll cover you for that. As long as for the time that is being claimed, okay, or for the act that is being claimed or being sued for, at that point you had an active policy with Britam. The policy will kick into place, and yes, you'll be covered 100%. So for example, if you took a policy today and it expires after 1 year, then 10 years from now, somebody brings a lawsuit. Remember, on liability classes, for example, the statutory limit in the Insurance Act is 12 years. So if somebody would sue you, maybe, for example, after 10 years, and it was an act that you did today, or your policy was active, yes, the policy will kick in and compensate you. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you. Dr. Gashi has said that, thank you for the clarification. So bearing in mind that it's now 10 minutes to 8, I think it's time to bring this to a close. Again, to the presenters, Dr. Kingara, Muiruri, Kinganga, and thank you so much for giving us the talk on well-being and for giving us the various ways of how we can ensure that emotionally, mentally, we're all well taken care of. To Rose and Samson for Britam, who also are our partners in KSA, thank you for the insightful and wonderful presentation. To Shelmith, and for tirelessly making sure that we're getting information on time, that this goes on seamlessly. We appreciate your efforts, and also to the executive to the executive board of KSA for coming up with these topics, because they're very well researched, very timely. So we thank you for that, and even for giving me this opportunity to be able to moderate for you. And finally, to our participants, it is because of you and it's for you that we keep on coming in week out. Thank you again for the shared contributions and also for the support and for joining us. Despite the fact that we are in a pandemic, it's good to see that we're still having the essence of being together, sharing with each other. So a big round of applause to all of you. I believe on that note, without any other further agenda, I wish you all a blessed evening and happy World Anesthesia Day tomorrow in advance.